Welcome to that interview experience with me, Ash Taylor, and your co-host, Helen Sanders. How are you, Helen?
I'm awesome. How you doing?
Right, you're not cold this morning, Helen?
No, I'm not. I'm positively fine. Thank you so much.
I'm just checking in on your health and making sure you're not,
I've got a scarf here just in case I get cold. So thank you for checking in on me.
That's good. That's good. We're joined today by, I still can't do that every time. We're joined by, yes, it is by Hannah Illingworth. Hello, Hannah. How are you? Thanks for joining us.
I'm good. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Cool. Brilliant. So this podcast is just about helping people, young people especially, getting set for the world of work, and specifically that first interview experience. So they're a little bit nervous, they're a little bit shy. When you've done a lot of interviewing, so do you want to just tell people your experience in terms of, what is it you do now, and what's your kind of background in terms of recruitment and that space of being involved on the other side of the desk? So just a little bit of background for people listening.
Yeah, sure. So now I run High Virtual, so that's my business, but that's quite a recent incarnation, shall we say, because I previously worked for over 20 years in the public sector. So I started my career at 17 when I worked in the Ministry of Defence, and worked my way up as a commercial officer, so buying all sorts of different equipment and things for the tri-services, so RAF, Navy and Air Force, Army. Better not forget that one, had I, when I'm...
Which one doesn't count?
Yeah, not the one I'm in or that my husband's in, it's probably the best. And then I moved across to the NHS when my family relocated to Lancashire, and I did quite a long time in the NHS in a huge variety of different roles. And at one point I had 43 direct reporting staff that I frequently recruited for. Yeah, huge, too big team.
That's a headache. Yeah, that in itself is a headache. That's a lot of interviewing. That's a lot of interviewing.
Yeah, I was trying to work out this morning actually how many interviews I did, and it must be over 300 to 400, just probably. Yeah.
Did you enjoy every single one?
No.
Say no more.
I enjoyed a lot. I do enjoy interviewing. I do, because you meet such a variety of people. And because I've interviewed for various different levels as well, obviously the variety is even greater. So yeah, I do enjoy, on the whole, I do enjoy interviewing, but it can get a bit tedious when you've done 8 or 9 in a day, and then you've got the following day as well. Yeah. So that's me.
Yeah. Cool, excellent. So what do you if we think specifically about young people, I mean, you must have had, especially in the NHS, people stepping out or coming into the NHS as their first job, hoping for their first job. And they might be young, maybe they've done a degree, maybe they're not, but you might have had the apprentice equivalents, that sort of stuff. So 16, 17, 18-year-olds. What are you looking for in terms of a young person? What are you hoping that they're going to bring to the organisation?
I think what we're looking for in young people is little bit different to what we're looking for in those that are experienced in work, because obviously they're not going to have the life experience that somebody at 40 or 50 is going to have. They're not going to have a variety of jobs that people will have had. So I want somebody that's confident, that is going to be able to hold their own in a team generally, because certainly when I've interviewed, it's generally been for largish teams. I want to see that they are able to use their initiative and their common sense. And just because they've not been able to get the experience of the different jobs, and that it doesn't mean to say that they haven't got any experience. So I would actively encourage anybody who is looking to go into work to try and get some experience, either as a volunteer, or I'd like to see something where they've taken the initiative and pushed themselves maybe out of their comfort zone, that's going to show that they can follow the rules, because unfortunately with work there are always rules to follow. They've got to be able to follow instructions, they've got to be able to adapt to that sort of team environment, and it is quite a challenge. It's very different to being in school and college. While I'm getting on a bit now, I do remember that first job and what it was like. But yeah, I mean, to me, if somebody comes to me and they've done something like the cadet force or the scouts, or they've volunteered in a charity shop, or, you know, even if they haven't necessarily had a job in the traditional sense, just having that sort of variety will make them a lot more appealing to me as an employer than somebody who has literally just sat in their bedroom on their Xbox for the last 3-4 years.
And the thing is with the NHS is, in order to get to that interview with you in the first place, you've probably not seen a CV from them. You've probably seen an application form, because the public service use application forms.
Yeah.
So is there an opportunity on there? If I'm a 17-year-old applying for my first job and I choose the NHS or the local authority, is there usually somewhere on there that you can go to as the potential interviewer to spot those bits and pieces that you want to find out? Because it's all very well saying, I did these GCSEs and I got these grades and I did this BTEC, but you're not really looking for that, are you? You're looking for all that other stuff.
That's right. To be honest, even to get to interview in the public sector is exceptionally hard, because generally we get a huge, I say we get, I don't, not anymore, but previously, I mean, it wasn't unusual to get over 100 applicants for one job. So obviously from a filtering point of view, that's a challenge as an employer, because you've got to filter quickly. You can't read every application carefully. So the way I used to filter was immediately was if somebody had not bothered to check, not bothered to follow instructions. So if it said, for instance, fill the application in black pen and somebody'd use blue, they would automatically go, because they can't follow an instruction, which may seem really harsh. But when you're up against 100 other candidates who can follow the instructions, there's got to be that line. But then I'd be looking for the key words. So there's always a job description, particularly for public sector, and there's always a person spec. And I'm scanning that application where people have given me examples of where they meet that criteria. So if somebody has been a member of the Scouts, for instance, and has helped with young cubs and things like that, and they've had to have team skills or leadership skills, there are ways that you can write that into that application. All right, it might not have been a job, but you can still link it to the skills in that job, and that's what I would look for. So you know, and if people in the additional information, there's always a box at the end that says additional information, tell us why, you know, you want this position or you should have this position. That's the perfect box to put all that information into. Anything else that you've not been able to squeeze into the basic criteria, there's always a bit of like, what have you done previously, you know, what jobs have you had, what's your education, and then there's a big box at the end where you can add anything else in.
And do you
and
find
so
yourself,
go on.
I was going to say, do you find yourself, you know, when you're trawling through, say trawling, but I guess that's kind of what it is, isn't it? When you're trawling through, say, 100 applicants or 90 applications for this one role, do you find yourself being drawn to that last box first? You know, is that a bit of a kind of shortcut to?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. I mean, to be honest, I would scan very quickly, because the public sector is quite strict on the education requirements. They are normally essential criteria. Whether I agree with that or not is a different matter, but it generally is. So I would scan that just to make sure that I'm not wasting my time first, and then very quickly go to that last box. Interestingly, in the public sector, you don't get their address and their name and their date of birth. None of that is sent to you as a recruit when you're recruiting. So we don't actually know how old anybody is. We can make a good stab from when they've done their exams and that, but we know nothing about it. It is very much a blind process.
And so if you're interviewing 8 people one day, 8 people the next day for one job, so that's 6, or maybe there's 2 similar jobs. So 16 people, 100 applications, I'm 18, I've applied, and I know that I hit all the essential marks. So I know that I'm going to get through that first stage. Where I really need to focus on the application is that extra information, where let's say 40 people match the essentials. The only other differentiator is that personal stuff where I'm allowed to be me and give you that information. So I need to really focus on that and give you that information.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I would actually do is, if it was a job I absolutely definitely want, because unfortunately people do just apply for the sake of applying. And particularly because it's so easy in the public sector, you save the job description, you press send. Don't ever be tempted to do that. Always personalize that job description. Have the basics there, but make sure that you change the individual paragraphs so it matches that specific job. But ring up generally before, ring up, even if there's no direct number on, ring up the hospital, ask the switchboard and ask to speak to the department manager for that job, because then you can find out more information that you can again wind into your application, and it shows that you've used your initiative.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, and the NHS does often say, if you'd like more information about this role, please call Hannah on. Yeah,
absolutely. Nearly always it will be on, but if not, there's always a main reception. Yeah, go and find it. There's always, and nobody will ever be annoyed if you've tried to ring them and their number's not on there. Nobody will ever get annoyed at that. It makes you stand out above all the other hundreds of people that are applying.
That's great advice. That's really good advice. Like yeah.
So coming to the actual interview then. So you've got through that process, and this might not necessarily just be the NHS, but you've got through the process, whether it's CV or application. They're then sitting there in that room in front of you, a little bit nervous, going for their first job. What are you looking for in the interview from that person?
A bit of personality. It's hard. Don't get me wrong, whenever anybody comes to interview, we always make allowances for the fact that people are going to be nervous. It's like doing your driving test or your anything, isn't it? You make silly blunders because you're so nervous, and we understand that. But I always found if you sit up on the edge of your chair and you sit up tall, it makes you feel a lot more in control. I want to see that they've made an effort. So if you turn up and you're sitting in your scruffy old trainers and your jeans with holes in for a position that's going to be representing our department, so for instance, when I had the A&E receptionist, they're the front line. They're the very first people that, as somebody that's poorly or a family comes in, they're going to see they're representing that department and that hospital. So I want to see that this person can actually represent us in the positive light, and if they're prepared to turn up for interview looking like a scruff, they're probably not going to be that bothered about how they represent the organisation. So I want to see that
you don't have to go and borrow your dad's suit. You just need to be smart.
No, just a pair of trousers and a nice top. It doesn't have to be. Now that said,
and clean your shoes. Clean your shoes as well.
Absolutely. But then if I was going for a job in Topshop, I probably would wear something more trendy,
more funky. Yeah,
absolutely, because it's a different job. Similarly, it's all about reading the situation for the job that you're applying for, but just to look so that you've made a bit of an effort. And then I would rather that somebody in an interview, if somebody doesn't understand the question that's been posed to them, don't try and blunder your way through the question thinking that that's better than saying, actually, I don't understand that question. Can you rephrase it? Because invariably you'll answer the question completely wrong. It's not that you don't know, it's just that it's maybe, and it might be that the question's not been phrased properly in the first place. It doesn't reflect badly on you. And actually because that then transfers when you're employed. If you're just going to blunder on all the time and do tasks that you've been set when you don't understand what you're doing, that's far worse than putting your hand up and saying, sorry, I don't understand. Can you just run that through again so we can try and get a better understanding of it and know what I'm doing? Yeah. So if they're prepared to ask in the interview, that will generally give me a good idea of how they're going to be actually doesn't always work, but generally in the actual work situation. But when somebody's never had any work experience, I'm also looking to see how they might be in the team. And even when they have got work experience, at the end of the day, you're coming into 9 times out of 10, you'll be coming into a team that's already established. So I'm looking for personalities and how they might fit in with your existing personalities. And, if you've got somebody who's very set in their ideas and isn't prepared to bend, that doesn't necessarily reflect very well. And they're not necessarily going to settle very well into an existing team. So it's just looking for the little nuances and things that they do that would show me whether they would actually fit in and how much work it's going to be because obviously at the end of the day, we've still got to function when we have somebody new. We've still got to be able to deliver on what we're doing. So it's just confidence and willingness to learn and all the little things that will show me that I don't necessarily want the finished article. I don't necessarily want somebody who can do every aspect of the job perfectly. I want somebody that I can develop and is willing to adjust and fit into that environment.
That's a really good point. So if I'm 16, 17, 18, leaving school, going to my first interview, you do not need to be perfect, because you can't possibly be. In fact, none of us are. We are all still learning how to do what we do. We are, we're all still learning things every week of our lives. So don't worry if you go to the interview and you don't have an answer to a question, or you don't understand the question. It's okay. You don't have to tick every box. You just need to be you and have that emotional connection with you if you're interviewing, so
Absolutely.
yeah.
It's remembering this is the start of your career.
Yes.
The decisions you make today, whether you choose to take this job or not, is not one that necessarily has to define you for the rest of your life. And it's everything you do at 16, 17 is about gaining experience. And so if you focus on making decisions for the immediate future rather than making decisions for what your life might be like in 40 years' time,
yes,
it changes the dynamic and changes the pressure, I think.
Yeah, data shows that people who are 16, 17, 18 over the last decade will probably change jobs and industries 4 times before they're 30.
Yeah, and we've been, I mean, 4 times, I think it's going to be, that's a database.
It's probably going to be more.
It's going to be more. And, we've been bringing in speakers to Beaconsfield School, where I'm an enterprise advisor. And we've had about 15 speakers in over the last 10 weeks. The one common theme we've seen all the way through is not one of them is doing a job or a role now that they started off doing or expected to be doing. They're all doing something.
None of us are.
None of us are.
How can you know at 16, 17 what you want to do for the rest of your life? Unless you've got, my daughter wants to be a doctor, as Ash knows. That, yes, you can understand because it's more of a vocation. Whereas but then again, she'll probably still change specialties and,
exactly.
But I think, I left school left college at 17, did a year of college, had enough, didn't want to go to uni or anything, worked in a bookshop for a year, then got the job, applied for the job in the MOD, got the job in the MOD. I didn't apply for a job specific, I applied for a grade. So I became an admin officer in the MOD and got put into the commercial cell, so as a buyer. I did that for a few years, then I moved to the NHS, and then I changed career several times with the path within the NHS, all transferable skills, but different jobs.
But that's the key bit there, isn't it? Whatever job you have now is just creating and adding to a set of skills you can take to the role that you do.
Yeah.
That's a really key point. So just coming back to the interview bit, what's your favorite interview question to ask?
Oh God, that's a tough one. I have a couple actually. So probably the one that is probably easiest to answer is tell me the time that you failed.
Nice.
Because but I don't want to see because they failed. I want to see that they've failed, but then realize that failure isn't a bad thing.
Yeah.
So I want to see that how they've taken that failure and then moved on from it and used it to help them shape how they've continued going forwards. I think the best question I've ever been asked was, what advice would I give to my last employer?
Oh my word.
That's so good.
And it was a bit of a loaded question because the person knew it was an internal move, and the person knew my last employer, and my last employer was quite a tyrant, bit of a bully, but I actually got on really well with her, so it was okay.
I like that, and I love the fact that Helen's writing that down.
Can you use that one,
I'm
Helen?
always learning. Yes, I am. Yeah.
So, but that's the point. You see, Helen is an incredibly experienced recruiter. That's what her business does, and yet she's met someone today. Okay, you've met before, but in this conversation, she's got a new tool that she can use, and this is the point: is that if you look at that interview as the end game, you are going to struggle. You need to look at it as an opportunity to build your skill set and your experience set for future scenarios. And not getting a job is never the end of the world, because there are always more jobs. There are more jobs available right now than there are people looking.
Yeah,
so
correct.
You can always do something. And the more you kind of go, right, okay, I didn't get that, but what did I learn? Where did I improve? What can I take to the next interview? The stronger you will be, and the more confident you will be, and the better able you will be.
And ask for that feedback as well. If you ever get to interviewing and do not get the job, never just walk away from the interview and say, oh, I actually didn't get the job. Ask why you didn't. I mean, it might be that actually the day you were just unlucky because there was a candidate who was slightly stronger, but actually on another day you might have got it. But if they can tell you, well, actually, well, you need to work on this or you need to work on that, then you're going to go into the next interview much stronger.
Yeah, if you work on it.
So, and also the person that you ask the feedback from, if they give you that feedback, they're going to remember you for that.
Yes.
And you never know when your paths are going to cross again.
Yeah.
It shows a level of maturity to take that feedback. Yeah.
Yeah. And to take it on board and actually work on it as well. Yeah. That you're not going to be closed.
So coming back to the question we asked about what's your favorite interview question, you know, that you've asked, and the one about failure, what was your favorite answer that you had?
I don't think he quite got the question.
Hey.
And he it still makes me laugh now.
Oh, no.
And so he was applying for a job as a payroll clerk, and I asked him, what, you know, give us an example of some time you failed. And he went on to this really long, I can't even remember what the substance of the actual answer was. And then I said, okay, so how did you take that forward? And he said, I asked my mum to help. And that was it. So I said, so if things are not going very well, for instance, you know, something's happened on the payroll and you've made a mistake and things, obviously payroll's a very emotive subject. It's what we all work for, isn't it? What would you do? I'd ask my mum to help. So if I could give any advice, never say in an interview, I'd ask my mum to help. You won't get the job. No. No, he didn't. Oh, yeah, I asked my mum to help. I do often wonder what happened to him.
I do actually like, I like his honesty. And I also like the fact that he respects that his mum might be able to help. Yeah. As a mum myself, I quite like that. But you're right, there will be other answers that are probably better. In answer to that question, did work. Tell me how you failed and what would you do if you had that situation again? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. His mum was in the hospital, but she wasn't. She was
hilarious! That's even funnier.
Clinical care. Okay. Hilarious. Yeah, very funny. It did make us chuckle. But then that's when you start to do the silent shoulder shaking, isn't it? In the interview, you can't look at the person you're interviewing with because you just know it'll.
You're gone, aren't you?
Yeah. I've had a few of those.
Oh, that's fantastic. Hannah, thank you so much for coming in today and chatting to us and sharing your experiences. Some real little bits of flecks of gold in there, I think, for people listening. If they can take that on board, I think there's some very, very useful information for people. Thank you for sharing your time.
And if they don't take it on board, Ash, they can ask their mum.
That's it. We have the answer to everything now. Ask mum.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, Hannah.
Thank you,
Hannah.